All right, good evening. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call Town Council to order. Can we have roll call, Veronica?
Councilmember Walter,
Present.
Councilmember Haskell,
Here.
Councilmember Flynn,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hufty,
Here.
Mayor Taylor.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. The third item on the agenda is a report out from closed session. Catherine?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The council met in closed session prior to tonight's regular meeting to conduct the annual performance evaluation of the town manager and provide direction to the town attorney as his labor negotiator. Nothing to report out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to number 4, presentations and proclamations. So tonight we have a commemoration honoring the life, leadership, and enduring legacy of former Portola Valley Mayor Edward C. Ted, as we all knew him, Driscoll. And I'd just like to give all the council members just a short moment to say, whatever their thoughts are on Ted, and then I will basically hand the commemoration to the family. And we really appreciate you coming here tonight. Thank you. So should we start? Mary?
Well, Ted was was an inspirational leader for all of us, and he never failed in his optimism, and he did a wonderful job with, of course, our town center in an effort that those of us who resist change resisted mightily, and he made a beautiful center a culturally alive, meaningful place in our town. And we deeply appreciate it. Also, as the more I've researched him, the more impressive he gets. So thank you for sharing him with us for those many years.
Thank you, Mary. Judith?
Yeah, the town certainly benefited from all of his efforts on our behalf. Ted actually was what interviewed me for the planning commission with Steve Tobin, and it made a huge difference. The way he was interacting, the way he was describing the opportunities and, being frank about the downsides. It was a great conversation, and I'm not sure I would have stepped up at that point if not for him. So on a personal level, he made a huge difference. And, looking forward, I'm sure I'm not the only one with that tale to tell. So he really did inspire people to step forward and volunteer in the good Portola Valley spirit. So we really appreciate Ted and you as family sharing him with us. Thank you.
Rebecca?
Yeah. I first met Ted through the town center renewal project, and I was very impressed with how much he went out to the community and listened to so many people's opinions and perspectives on this. And I was also really impressed with how informed he was about the whole green building features of the town center. And he really pushed to put those and to get us our LEED certification so that the town center could be sort of a goal for many other communities. So I was very impressed with how smart he was and how kind he was. Thanks.
Helen?
Well, I was raised here. I actually didn't know your dad. But I have, my parents knew him, and I always heard about your dad. And for those of us who grew up here, like I learned to drive over where the tennis court was in front of the old building over there, right? Like round and round in a big parking lot. So that your dad had the vision to help create what we have today, I really appreciate. And I'm sorry for your loss. But please know that I am grateful that he guided our town like he did. So thank you.
And I would just echo the comments of my fellow council members. For people who haven't been here, the town center that we sit in now, which is the cultural heart of Portola Valley, was driven by Ted. Ted made it happen. I mean, other people were certainly involved, but without Ted's leadership, it would not have happened. And I was here when there were people who were against it. I mean, as hard as it is to believe today how beautiful it is, that people would have been against this. But at the time there were, and Ted drove it forward, had charrettes, brought people together to make it happen. So again, I think we were so lucky to have him both serving as a council member and basically having a vision for what we could have here at the town center. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for the family for sharing him with all of us in Portola Valley. It's greatly appreciated. And with that, I would like to hand you a proclamation. So thank you for coming tonight, and I'll walk to you. You don't have to come up to me.
Thank you.
We're not going to do our moment of silence.
Do you want to do a moment of silence?
I think they've left. I don't know.
We can do a moment of silence. I mean, we give him the proclamation. I'm good with that. Why don't we
Okay.
just take a moment and just remember some of the great things that Ted did for this town?
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to move on to the next one, but again, I think Ted was deeply appreciated by this town.
I wanted to just say that one of the things that have come out of this is that the Historic Resource Committee is working hard on the archives, the historic resource, and we're hoping to have sort of the personalities of the town and a commemorative page at some point come out of that effort.
Great. We'll look forward to it. All right. With that, I'm going to close number 4 and move on to number 5, the town manager report. Darcy?
Yes. Good evening, Darcy Smith, Town Manager. I'll give a brief report. First of all, thank you for everyone who attended our last summer concert series. I think I saw many of you there, and it was packed, to be honest. I would say for the next one, which is August 6th, get there early, get your little spot on the lawn with your blanket and enjoy it. I have a housing element amendment update, which is that we've checked the box, submitted it, the state housing and community development department, and they have 60 days to respond, and they will either give us another comment letter or they might certify it. But that will happen mid-September, and then the plan would be to bring it back to the council as soon as possible. So thank you to all the council and the planning commission and our committees and the staff who helped this happen. It is certainly an important milestone to move forward and, as you know, remove the Dorothy Ford Park and open space site from the housing element and replace it with 3 other sites that we're really excited about. And then an important note to the community, our next council meeting on August 12th will be canceled. And the next meeting of the town council will be August 26th. And that said, the town hall will remain completely open. So we are there in the mornings, and frankly, it's been very busy in the morning. So we welcome you in and we open at 8:30 if you want to come in. And that concludes my short report. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Any questions for the town manager? No, good. All right. So then moving on to oral communications. So I'll open this up to the public. These is basically for anything that we've discussed up to this point and any other things that are not on tonight's agenda. So I don't see any hands in the schoolhouse. And I don't see any hands online. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close oral communications and move on to the consent agenda. So are there any public comments on the consent agenda? Again, I don't see any in the schoolhouse. I don't see any online. All right, so I'm going to bring it back to the council. Are there any consent agenda items that a council member wants to pull? No. All right, then I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I hear no opposition. All right, moving on to number 8. Regular agenda. First topic is the considering adoption of a resolution authorizing an additional, basically, this is a consideration of whether we should spend more money on the auditing to accelerate the audits. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. Tonight's item, staff is asking council to recommend to adopt a resolution authorizing an additional $45,000 in general fund appropriation in the current year in order to expedite the completion of the audits for fiscal year 23-24 and for fiscal year 24-25. Apologies. So in our meetings with Mays and Associates, who is the town auditor, they agreed to do fiscal years 23-24 and 24-25 concurrently. And since financial responsibility and long-term viability is one of the highest council priorities. One strategy was completing the backlog of the audits, and it's time we put these to bed. And so in our conversation with Mays, they did propose a very aggressive schedule. I'm happy to report that we have reached the first 2 milestones. The first one was on July 20th. We were to have trial balances and prepared by client checklist items, which was schedules. It was about 30 for each fiscal year. We were able to produce about 95% of what the auditors had asked for. And on the 20th, the auditors did confirm receipt and that they were have what they need in order to meet the deadline of issuing both financial statements by October 15th, 2026. This chart is the schedule. As I stated, the trial balances and the PBC checklists were due to Mays on the 20th. We did meet that goal. I have already received the first analytical review questions for fiscal year 24. I'm almost completed with my review of that. We'll probably have that back to Mays either tomorrow or Friday. And then they will send 25 when that is done. And then looking at next month, we'll have the analytical review questions before August 10th. And then we'll have Mays conducting field work through August 21st. And hopefully with the first draft of financial statements by August 25th. And then the next few weeks will be final review, revisions, and approval. When the draft financial statements are available, we will be taking them to the Finance Committee before coming to council. So plan on the second meeting in October for the financial statements for 23, 24, and 24, 25 to be brought to council for acceptance. So yes, some considerations for the before adopting the resolution. Number 1, yes, we are asking for an additional $45,000 appropriation for the current year. By doing so, we'll be able to reduce the finance department's budget by $95,000 in the next fiscal year. But one trade-off is that with this being a priority for the finance staff and myself personally, we will be delaying in hiring the finance manager until probably October before we can even start the recruitment. And it's not just for the audit. There's also other projects that are coming online as well. We're going to be bringing to council the street resurfacing contract probably in September. And then October or in August, we'll also be bringing a contract for an IT service provider as well. So these are some items that are on my plate as well, and we'll be getting those off my plate as well. And if you look on the chart on the right, which is the finance department's budget, the amount adopted was $906,000. We're asking for an additional $45,000. We did have $50,000 budgeted for miscellaneous consultants. The plan was to bring in an additional person to augment staff and just focus on the 23-24 audit. But since Mays came back with the proposal, we're just going to bite the bullet and just get these audits done. So we'll be reducing miscellaneous consultants by $50,000, but we will be increasing the accounting and auditing line by 95, which is a net 45. Also, if there's any other overages, since we're delaying hiring the finance manager, we'll have some salary savings as well to cover any overages as well. So that concludes my report. Back to council for questions.
Thank you, Tony. And I'd just like to add to this that I think Tony probably spent 30 hours last weekend working on this. So
As a staff, we spent over 100 hours. But
Great, great.
personally, I mean, I did 30 hours over the weekend, but
yeah, in addition to all your staff time. So I'm just saying finance staff is on this and it's greatly appreciated. So questions for Tony on this?
I
Yeah,
have a
go.
couple. These are pretty straightforward. But Tony, you're saying we're putting off the hiring of the finance director. Is that because it would take your time
yes, I
to
mean,
do
we
that? And we have to,
do
yeah.
applications, do interviews. I just do not have that in my.
yeah, and I understand. I just wanted to make sure I was following the rationale. And then in terms of the next year's savings, just explain that to me one more time.
Right. So we're not going to be having $50,000 for additional consultants.
Right.
And we're also not going to have 2 audits. We'll actually be paying for 1.
Oh, we're front loading this year.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Helen?
I-
Yep. Go ahead.
So, I know that we've had some public comments about trying to get these audits done potentially before, if we vote tonight to put this on the ballot. And I'm wondering how much, how was this decision, like recommendation based on that idea to have it done before the potential ballot measure?
That was part of it, but the other part of it is we just need to get these done.
Because if we didn't do this,
Mhm.
remind me when it would be done?
We would still be 1 or 2 years behind going forward. But with bringing in the finance manager, we could probably catch up with 1 more. But then next year we would still be 2 years behind. And so we would still be playing catch up. But it probably wouldn't be until 27, 28 that we would have had all the audits caught up.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's my question.
And one other thing I can mention, just because I was involved in talking to Mays, is we now have a partner doing our audits. So that's the way we made this work, is they didn't have their normal sort of auditing staff to do this because they're going to be booked in August. But we got a partner who said, I'm going to cancel my vacation to work on this stuff. So we all along the line here, we've gotten people we've moved this stuff around. So I think the other thing is it's going to cost us a little bit more, but we're getting a higher quality auditor on our audits for the next 2 years. So I think that's another great plus. Other questions for Tony?
Yeah. I really appreciate how much effort you and others put into actually finding a solution with Mays to get this work done. I understand that it makes sense not to delay hiring the finance manager because of the bandwidth to actually find somebody, but I am a little concerned about what type of support you might need for some of the finance tasks, given that I think you're doing at least 3 jobs now. So, I just kind of want to understand a little bit what support you would need just for some of to offload a little bit while you focus on the audits and the other jobs.
I'm
If-
happy to say that staff are happy and willing to, if whatever I need. The finance staff has been my own personal pet project since I started. And it's been training and getting their skills up to date. And they are 100 times better than when I started. So that's lessened the load for me a little bit. But I mean, I still have my day-to-day, I have to review and post and just because of internal controls. But the other duties, every other staff member is stepping up and, if I don't have the answer, they can help me out as well. So personal note, I enjoy a challenge. And so it's kind of been my career has been every position I've held has been a challenge in some sort of way. But I'm very happy to say that the staff is stepping up and supporting me in my role.
And then my second question, well, I guess I have three in all. You had said something about capital projects that I didn't quite catch.
We'll be bringing the street resurfacing project in September.
And that's with our interim public
Interim-
managers handling that right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my last question was, I know that there's a certain number of years you can work with each auditor.
Mhm.
And with Mays, we've managed that by working with a new partner. And then what is the plan for 25, 26? Will we need to recruit a completely new auditor or?
No, technically it'll be year 3 with this partner.
Okay.
I have 3 additional years. But we can always revisit that. But yes, every 6 years, we're to rotate auditing firms unless they have multiple partners. And as long as we can rotate partners, then we can stay with the same firm. But I'm very pleased with May stepping up and helping us get through this and being a partner for us.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Tony before I open up to the public? Okay, no. All right. Are there any questions for Tony or comments, I guess I should say, for Tony in the schoolhouse? All right. So I don't see anybody's hand raised in the schoolhouse. And I don't see any hands online. All right. So I'm going to bring it back to the council for discussion and potential approval. So who would like to start? Go ahead,
I'll
Judith.
Thank you so much. It is going to be so great to move beyond the discussion of why we're late and revisiting history. And frankly, this is an opportunity to turn the page and get things right. And I think that part of our priorities was to move us into position to get it right. I do admire your tenacity and love of a challenge. So on a personal level, thank you so much for applying that energy here. I know we don't want to pay more than we have to at this moment in our town's history, but this opens up so many better possibilities. Grants are going to be more easily available to us that to me, this is a pretty straightforward analysis, and I'm very grateful we have the opportunity. So I support it.
And it will also free up my time.
Very importantly.
Other
Yes,
comments?
I'm totally in support, and this makes a lot of sense. I'm just so glad we can finally see the finish line and go for it.
Becca?
Yeah. I want to echo what my colleagues have said as well. And I think it's the reasons to accelerate these audits is that it's very important that we communicate to the residents that our financial documents are very high quality, that particularly since you've come on board and all the incredible work that you've put in, as well as your team, in fixing all the problems that were identified before you arrived. I think it's really important that the audit will only just reconfirm what we all know already, that our finance team and our financial documents are perfectly well kept, and we are following all the rules and the government auditing rules, and that everybody can be safe and feel safe and secure that the numbers that we're publishing are accurate. So again, I appreciate you're missing your vacation. You're not going on your vacation. And I do appreciate how much effort you're putting into our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen?
So I'm sorry to hear you're gonna miss your vacation out potentially. And I'm somewhat relieved to hear that it's not just about the election, because I have this in the 2024 election, nearly 60% of voters cast their ballots early. And October 28th is early. So hopefully, we always want people to vote and vote early. So I was a little bit concerned about that. But I would love to get these audits taken care of, and it would be nice. It would be such a relief to have it be done. And so I support that. So thank you.
Thank you. So I would echo my colleagues. I mean, this is money well spent. There's no doubt in my mind. This is closing a very unfortunate chapter in the town's finances. And Tony and your staff have been instrumental in leading that charge. So thank you for doing that. And we're all glad you enjoy a challenge. Thank goodness for that. So with that, I would entertain a motion to authorize additional general fund budget for the Maze contract.
I move to authorize.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I hear no opposition. Congratulations, Tony. Thank you again for your hard work. All right, now we're going to move on to agenda item 8B. This is considering a adoption of a resolution submitting to the voters of Portola Valley a measure both to adopt the town charter and to authorize a real property transfer tax. So with that, who's presenting?
Yes.
Darcy?
Yes, I have the pleasure of presenting this item. Just give me a second to bring up the PowerPoint. Come on, sorry. Okay, there we go. Oh, I'll be presenting, but as I get the PowerPoint up, I just want to make sure everyone knows it was a real team effort. And while I'm making this presentation, our esteemed town attorney, Catherine Engberg's available to answer any questions after we're done. Tony McFarland, assistant town manager, is here as well. And then I want to acknowledge Lauren Tarpe, who's Catherine's associate, who's been really helpful on this as well. So hold on, does not like to screen share. Maybe a testament of how important this ballot measure is to improve some of the challenges in our town, like our capital infrastructure here. Okay, so this is the consideration of a resolution, and I will acknowledge that the town team has been working on this for over a year. So this is an important milestone. But I want to reflect on where we started. In 1964, this town was incorporated primarily, although not only, to ensure local control over development, as this town faced development pressure in the hills, and to preserve the rural beauty. As you can see in this photo from Dan Quinn, our local photographer, we have a lot of natural beauty, and we also have a lot of ecologically and environmental sensitive land. This town was founded by volunteers, and for many decades run by volunteers, such as Ted Driscoll, who you just heard about. And that was really meant to minimize our costs and that in turn, though, resulted in minimal taxes. The general plan goals, which we're very proud of, the general plan is our constitution for growth, echo these sentiments of keeping our town rural and tranquil, family friendly, and using the land in a manner that's compatible with the ecological and environmental richness of the community. When we started on this journey to look at this ballot measure back in September, we found overwhelmingly positive feedback from the residents that were surveyed, that 91% of them are satisfied with the quality of life. And I think it's a credit to this town council and the councils before you that local governance is what keeps our values and our character intact. So Tony talked a little bit about one of the council's top priorities that we've been working on, and he demonstrated the work that the staff has put into that over a few years. He's been working hard, as you've heard, on the backlog of audits, and we now have a successful plan in place. He's been implementing the financial consultant best practice recommendations. You adopted the master fee schedule recently with improved fees that reflect the true cost of providing these services to our residents. And one of the key items which we're talking about tonight is preparation of a town charter and a real property transfer tax ordinance that was placed on the ballot. And the guiding mission of that is to provide locally controlled funding to ensure the town's fiscal stability and autonomy, which I'll talk more about. So you've seen this slide before. I want to just note it has gotten worse in the last month as we looked at our budget and we looked at the cost, for example, of the sheriff's contract. And I think some people look at this and they only see the $700,000 ongoing structural deficit and they think, well, that's all you need to raise. But in fact, we've deferred a lot of items. This is what I would call like the life support plan. You know, we're on life support, but eventually there is an unfortunate outcome when you're generally on life support. And what we've seen is not uncommon to cities. It's also not uncommon to household budgets as they've looked at inflation and growing costs, but our expenses are increasing faster than our revenues. And a lot of our revenues, you know, comes from property taxes and it does not grow quickly. I know this community and you have heard a lot about the law enforcement contract costs, but Tony and I looked at the numbers recently and I'll tell you what I saw when I stared at the numbers was shocking that in 5 years since the contract costs started going up, they've gone up 85%. So we were at $1.37 million cost in 21-22, and this year it's 2.54 million. That's an 85% cost increase. That is the reality, and that's not going down. If anything, their costs will continue to go up. And the general fund burden of paying that also increased more, 94%, because we had one-time COVID funds called the ARPID funds, and we were getting credits. But this harsh reality is that this is caught up with us. And so without new revenue, our forecast is the black line. Next fiscal year, the reserves will fall below our lowered 20% minimum. That, as you know, was a new policy adopted. It was previously 60%. And our reserves will be depleted. So to address this issue, we started having the community engagement portion, which is dubbed the Portola Valley Conversation. And we heard from residents about, you know, what they value. And they told us they do value, of course, public safety, and they value emergency preparedness. They also value town autonomy and local control. And they want our town, as I'm sure we all do, is to become financially stable and to maintain our autonomy, to have a valid emergency reserve. Because again, we are in an area that is ecologically, geologically sensitive. And now we have the more increasing threat of fire. And they want us to be self-reliant or resilient. What local control does is it ensures it can't be taken by the county, the Sacramento, or the federal government, which has been a track record, right? We've seen that the county level with the vehicle license fees. And that was a tough issue and is still not resolved. And this county has been fighting for every dollar. And sometimes the state just says, we're going to keep it. So again, this conversation with surveying the residents led to the residents prioritizing that we should protect our autonomy. We should protect our ability to make our own local decisions over zoning and over our financing. And if we did lose that independent status, our zoning and land use decisions would unfortunately be made by the county. So we believe it's important to keep our autonomy and our ability to be self-reliant. It's just very important to us. So when we surveyed the community, there were 4 top priorities that were ranked. And in fact, I'll there were many and then they sort of got clustered together. But the number one interest of the community right now is wildfire prevention. That includes the brush management, which the town does. We have the chipper program and we pay Woodside Fire money to do this. And no, they wouldn't do it for free. If we weren't paying Woodside Fire, we'd be paying another vendor. It's expensive work. Emergency response is important to the community, of course, maintaining the 911 emergency response time, police patrols, maintaining our town autonomy as independence, as I talked about previously, is important. And also important is our storm drain infrastructure. We've seen heavier flooding and heavier storms, and repairing this deteriorating storm drain is important to ensure that we don't have flooding and water pollution and sinkholes. And it can lead to roads washing out. And that would be a big problem in our community since we basically have two main roads in. So this all led to the council being presented with the option that we're here to talk about tonight, which is a town charter, which I'll talk a little bit about what that means, and a transfer tax. And again, that was the most viable option supported by the residents. Our Finance and Audit Committee did a lot of hard work, and we really want to thank them for looking at a lot of options. But when you're looking at a ballot measure, you really have to pick one and only one. You can't have multiple options. And this is the one that would be the most successful outcome for the town. So in April, the council directed us to start this work in earnest and prepare the town charter. So I'm really proud that we completed both hearings on the town charter already in May and June. Those are required. And again, just to briefly remind the council and any new audience members what the charter will do, it converts us from what I'll call the generic or general law to a charter town. The focus of this is on revenue authority. And I want to emphasize that that's part of our autonomy, having local control over our revenue. The local revenue goes 100% to the town. There would be no change to the town governance. We would still have the town council and the town manager form of government. And if the charter can only be changed by the voters. Again, there's a lot the charter doesn't do. And I think you can read online about charters, and some cities are over 100 pages. Ours is simple. It's 2 pages. It's meant to enable this taxation. It does not affect local election procedures. It doesn't change voting options. It doesn't affect public contracting, prevailing wages. Ours is simple, and it's meant to accomplish what is most important to this town. And again, charter towns are different than general laws, but important to note, we follow a lot of the same state laws. And the main thing, again, is that we have this ability to enact this tax. But it doesn't change, our adherence to the US and California Constitution. And some people have asked, is it a lot more expensive? No, it's not that more expensive. There's really no cost after we pass the charter. And the election cost is about $6,000 to add this to the ballot since it's a statewide ballot. So now I've talked about the charter, I'll talk about the real property transfer tax ordinance, which the council reviewed in detail 2 weeks ago. As I reviewed at that meeting, this will be an ordinance that amends our current municipal code chapter, and it will eliminate what is the existing 27.5 cents per $500 or 55 cents per thousand transfer tax and replace it with this new real property transfer tax of $10 per 1,000 in locally controlled funding. That's the staff recommendation. We are seeking feedback tonight from the council, but I want to pause there because there have been a lot of community questions about the rate, and it's just remind the council and the audience that the council is explicitly authorized to repeal or reduce that tax without going to the voters. So if, for example, you decide in the future that was generating enough revenue, you could lower it to $8 or $7, and that could be done very quickly with an ordinance. And then if the council found themselves in a financial predicament, then it could be increased. As we talked about the last meeting, we are not recommending any changes at this time to the current exemptions, again, in our current ordinance. Those are largely consistent with state law, and that's the simplest approach. We have been asked, we staff a lot of different exemptions. There's a lot of, well, what if this or what if that? What if we had a wildfire? What if this happened? Again, the council can add future exemptions by an ordinance which, as you know, goes in effect 30 days. And I think if we did have something as catastrophic like a wildfire that affected a lot of properties, and all of a sudden lots of properties were looking for sale, we would of course examine this. And it's important to note that under our GAN limit, which is a state requirement, we do have a maximum amount that the town council can authorize in expenditure. So there are some checks and balances. Another thing is independent oversight. And I just want to emphasize that that is, which is in the ballot measure question, which I'll show you soon, that has been added to the ordinance in the sense that the current Finance and Audit Committee would provide this independent oversight. That's consistent with their charter, which allows them to have this oversight of the revenue generated from the measure as an independent oversight. And we've gotten a lot of questions about how this transfer tax actually works. Again, people pay it now. They may not remember they pay it, but it's $1.10 per thousand. And it shows up when you go to buy a property on your closure, escrow closing documents. It's a one-time tax on the transfer. So if there's, for example, transfers of property from like a parent to a child, but it's not an actual sale, this doesn't apply. This is based on, again, the transfer, the sale of the property. It's not an annual property tax. And usually buyers and sellers negotiate. Sometimes, it's 50-50. Sometimes it's someone else pays it, but it's really important to remind people that if you don't own property or if you rent, you tax, and it is collected again by the title company when you close escrow. And I've heard it can be rolled into the mortgage for some folks too. But again, important to remember that 100% of this town's transfer tax would stay in the town, and the county separately retains its documentary transfer tax. So again, a little bit more about charter cities, because a lot of people have asked, is that something special? Are we unique? Right now, a little 26% of California cities have charters. And in our area, there are other transfer taxes like San Mateo, but theirs is only a commercial transfer tax, which some cities have that. What I'm showing you here are other cities that are more residential in nature that have transfer taxes that would affect single family properties. And our $10 per thousand, which is the recommended rate, is actually, when you look at this, on the lower side. There are communities around us like Mountain View that have $15 on more higher valued property sales. And there are places like Piedmont, I just want to point out, that recently decided to have a ballot measure in November to increase it up to 1.75% because they found that their current rate, which is $13 per thousand or 1.3%, isn't adequate. They're similar to us. They're mostly a residential community without a lot of tax revenue from other sources. So there's been a lot of talk about what this money could be spent on, and I'm not going to show you a slide with any dollar amounts, but I just want to emphasize it would be a general tax, and the council, if this should pass, resolution should pass, and the ballot measure pass, they really need to roll up their sleeves and get working on the budgeting and the spending policy, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail after this passes. And the council could consider a spending plan and policy, because while this is the list that came out of the community surveying, there's a lot more work to be done in terms of how to spend the money. Generally, there's allocations for some of the things that, again, are safety related, but there's a lot of other things that this could be spent on. And some of this we've been talking about, like storm drains. We talked earlier this year about a storm drain master plan and the need to do that. So here's the ballot question, and it was in the packet in the resolution, but I just want to show you this, and then we can come back to it later in the night. This is staff's recommendation, and I want to emphasize that it has to be an objective, factual ballot question, and we have been able to document through our past tax revenues, because again, we collect this revenue already. We've been collecting it since 1967, the transfer taxes that that the state allows us to. And we do think approximately $2 million is what we would generate when we look into average home sales over the past 15 years. But I can bring this back up for the discussion. But essentially what we're asking the voters is, do they want to adopt a charter for the town of Portola Valley solely for and establishing a real property transfer tax of $10 per $1,000? And again, that would be a general tax, not a special tax. So if the council decides to put this on the ballot through adopting the resolution tonight, then the town attorney springs into action. She actually has a lot of work to do because she has the responsibility of writing an impartial analysis. And that's, again, an impartial analysis of the effects of the measure on existing law and operation. So she would work on that. And then there are other pieces of this puzzle, including the arguments and the rebuttals. And those are public documents that are available to be reviewed here. And for future consideration, I don't want to get ahead of us, but we've had a lot of questions in the community. It's sort of like, well, who decides where the money goes and what's the independent oversight? What does that mean? As I mentioned previously, the current charter of the town's Finance and Audit Committee includes provisions for their independent oversight. And at our meeting with them last Monday, there were ideas about a spending policy and some ideas of how the money could be allocated. So Tony and I have worked on these tax measures in the past, and what we've seen is often a spending plan policy that's developed if the ballot measure passes, and it would be developed with the committee and the community. And there's a lot of different elements that could be in, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of what those could be. Some of these things came up with the Finance Committee last week. They are keenly interested, again, at looking at our reserve target because they lowered it recently to 20% they made a recommendation, you approved it, but that gives them a little bit of pause when they think about the town's security. There was an interest in maybe designating a planned annual funding amount for capital and safety projects. They want to look at maybe potentially, again, thresholds for when this tax or the user utility tax might be lowered upon meeting threshold criteria. They obviously are keenly interested in the audits. So this fund would be audited, and they're interested in transparent reporting to the public. So this is an item to work on, but I just want the public to know that there's a lot of work still to be done, and a lot of it comes around how the money could be spent, and a spending policy is often a useful tool to shape that. So again, we've had a lot of meetings since we've been talking about this, March, April, May, June, July. So a lot. And tonight is your time to consider placing this on the ballot. Our filing deadline is August 7th. And if approved by the voters with a simple, which is a 50% plus one majority, then the charter takes effect when the town files it with the Secretary of State, after the town certifies the election results, and the ordinance which imposes the tax is effective 10 days after the council certifies the election results. So tonight's meeting, based on the purview of the mayor, could be separated into two different discussion items. The first could be a more detailed discussion of the transfer tax rate, because in the past we haven't had the rate as a discussion item, and then the ballot question text. I will tell you that ballot question text writing is an art and a little bit of a science. It was based on our scientific analysis, but we are stuck at 75 words, which makes it very hard to write this. And again, as I noticed, it must be a true and impartial synopsis of the purpose of the measure, and we have to include certain requirements. But I want to also emphasize that the impartial analysis that the attorney prepares does flesh out some of the items that I've talked about tonight in more detail, such as the independent oversight and more information. So that will be prepared again very quickly, and that's included in the voter pamphlet and so on. So that concludes my staff report. Again, the item before you tonight, which is read by the mayor and published on our agenda, is the consideration of this resolution, which would submit the item to the ballot for the voters on November 3rd. So happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Darcy. Questions for Darcy? Ellen?
Can you guys turn off the fan? Thank you. Okay,
Do you have any other questions for Darcy?
thank you. Sorry. It just was hitting me in the face. So for the record, because we've had some questions and I don't mean to throw a ringer out, but can you remind us, why we're not doing a parcel tax?
Well, the simplest answer is that it requires a higher majority threshold to pass, which is 66.67%. And generally, it is very challenging for towns and cities to meet that threshold.
Okay, thank you. And can you also remind us why we came down at the one number?
Yeah, so the 1%, or also referred to as $10 per thousand, that was based on the town's analysis of our financial needs. And you heard me say that we've estimated the revenue at that level would be approximately 2 million. That's based on analyzing the current property sales, which we get from our tax consultant. And again, we're collecting this tax now, so we have real numbers of property sales and the taxes that they paid. And again, our current exemptions, and it would be approximately $2 million. And we believe that's the approximate number of our funding needs based on where we are right now.
Thank you. And remind me, if this were to get passed, would it be clear if it's the seller or the buyer who would be responsible for it?
So that is negotiated through the private transaction. It is not specified by us. It's not specified in state law, and it's generally something that realtors, buyers, and sellers are aware of now because they've been paying it, and they work out an agreement.
So, and to add that, if we wanted to spell that out, that they would agree.
No, we cannot spell that out.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
When I say they've been paying it now, they've been paying, again, the current authorized rate, which is 110 per thousand.
Right. Okay, great. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to my right? Mary? No questions? Okay, Judith?
Just a couple of confirmations, clarifications. When you talk about a spending plan and policy, that just mechanically would be something the council is before the council. It's a council decision
Correct.
with finance and audit committee consultation.
Correct. Input, yes. And I would also advise we have one community meeting where it's presented and community input is received.
Okay. And when we talk about independent oversight by the Finance and Audit Committee, are we changing the role of you said it's in their charter, but what does that mean? Do they have, is it similar to their role on audits at this point? They review, they discuss, they pressure test?
Correct. It's similar to that. Also, they would have a similar role in expenditures. So right now in their charter, they do review the town's budget and the expenditure plan. And so they would also look at that because the source of revenue is folded into our annual budget. So it becomes part of that budget package in terms of the expenditures.
Okay, so there's nothing to do to change that charter.
Correct. The charter would not need to change it last week, and
Okay.
it authorizes this.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca?
I think I had all my questions answered in our one-on-one. Thanks.
Okay, great. All right, so with that, let me open it up to the public. Are there any public comments? Are there any comments in the schoolhouse? Please, welcome.
I need to push a,
You do.
no,
No,
it's
not on
on.
that one. That one will just,
It's going, yeah.
it's going.
My name's Richard Merck. I live at 171 Brookside Drive here in Portola Valley. I spent 32 years on the planning commission and the town council combined. My picture's up there on the wall, pretty close to Ted Driscoll's. And my concern is about, I'm 81 years old, and I'm concerned about us old folks that live in town that might be transferring. And oh, you'll have to excuse me, I have not read the details of this. I only heard about this meeting by seeing an old almanac and realizing that there was a meeting tonight. That was like an hour and a half ago. So I'm here unprepared. I'm sorry. But my concern is that it's not clear to me when you say a property transfer tax, that if I move my property into a family trust, whether I have to pay that tax, or if I leave my property to a child and they inherit it without having to incur additional taxes under Proposition 13 and those following propositions. Are those things exempted? How are they handled? Is it clear how those things are done? Because if they're exempted, I'm totally in favor of this. But if they're not, you're going to have a fight on your hands. Thank you.
Great, thank
That's it.
you. So what I'd like to do is I'll take all public comments and then we'll, answer some of the questions. And generally it's public comment, but we try to answer important ones. And I think that the general public would be interested in hearing the answers to the questions you're asking as well. So let me go through everybody's public comment and then we'll come back. And Darcy, are you going to be prepared? So you'll keep track of so, all right. So any other hands in the schoolhouse? All right. So I don't see any other hands in the schoolhouse. So then let me go online. I see Dale's hand up. Dale, welcome.
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. You're fairly low, but we can hear you.
I will try to speak up.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got 3 points. Number one, since it appears that at least one prior town manager and at least one prior town council ignored some fiduciary responsibilities, I would like to see this council implement some real teeth so we don't get into this mess again. That includes teeth about ensuring that audits are completed on time and perhaps ensuring that there is a balanced budget. That would give me a lot more confidence that we've resolved this issue and we're not going to have it in the future. Number two, the ballot language, as at least I saw in the documents, to me appears to be disingenuous and maybe a little bit misleading, because the first item listed is wildfire prevention. And, at least for the past several years, the budget for wildfire mitigation in this town has been less than the legal budget. And I'm sorry, but you can't put it number one when we all know that the real problem here is you're trying to fill a hole to solve the problem of the sheriff's contract and maybe a few other things that have been pushed off. So I have a real problem with the language, and I think you ought to be honest about that. And number three, I'm in support of Betsy Morgenthaler's letter that I saw in the comments about maybe making it $8 instead of $10, because let's be honest, you will never decrease your tax burden. And if it's $8, then maybe you have to work on a lower budget, and if you need to, you can raise it. But I hate to see it start at 10 because I know you'll never decrease it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Is there anybody else online that would like to comment? All right, I don't see any hands online. Let me bring it back to the council for discussion. I would like to actually discuss both of these at the same time. I don't see any reason to bifurcate them. So as we go through, I think it's basically comments both on the amount and then on the ballot wording. So anybody like to start?
Just a procedural question. Do you want us to raise any public comments for clarification
Yes.
while we're making our?
Actually, why don't we, since it was relatively small public comments, why don't we do that now? So thank you. I appreciate So Darcy, if we could address a couple of Richard's questions in particular, and I think we could comment on a few of Dale's as well.
Yes. So it's important to note this transfer tax is assessed essentially on a sale. And so if a property is transferred into a revocable living trust where the current owner remains the grantor or beneficiary, that's just a nominal change in title, not a sale. So there would be no tax assessed. A transfer to a child is if it was a true gift or inheritance, not like in your will, like I'm going to sell my daughter my house for $2 million versus the market value of 10 million. But if it's a true gift, as you know, there are federal and estate taxes that could be imposed, but this again is not a sale. And so it would be exempt from the transfer taxes. But I just want to pause there because many times estates are more complicated. But this came up last time, and I want to also say that it's very different than like your property tax assessments. This is essentially a one-time fee on a deed recorded sale.
And it's worth mentioning that the exemptions are the exemptions that exist today in
Correct.
state law. We're not
Correct.
adding it. It's exactly
Correct.
the same set.
Correct. Yeah. So then the other question was raised by Dale about wildfire prevention spending. And I want to emphasize, and we've talked about this with the budget, that we've trimmed our wildfire prevention budget. We've trimmed our days that we pay Woodside Fire to do the work for clearing. And it's significantly less than what Tony and I, as your budget team, would recommend to you. And it's just the reality that we've been living in. Again, we're on life support. So when you're on life support, you can't really fund what you want to fund. So I don't think people should look at the current budget or again, the $700,000 deficit and say, oh, that's how much we need. And I've gotten that question a lot.
And I might add on the wildfire prevention, I mean, Woodside actually provides residents a sort of matching grant. And we've talked about it, and the fire department has actually recommended that we implement that. But
Yeah.
given our current budget situation, there's no chance we're going to do
Yeah.
that. But with this ballot measure, that would be something that we could consider in our spending plan. We're not committing to it, but it's definitely something that we could consider after looking at our other needs.
Correct. And our safety element, which we're working on, and the local hazard mitigation plan, which was prepared by the county, has things in it like the grant because they're interested in how we're reducing the wildfire hazard. So yeah, we're not keeping up with our neighbors and we're not honoring our plans, which is an unfortunate predicament. The other question about the audits, we are required to do audits and we have a plan to catch up. And I know that Tony and I and the finance staff, the team you have now, audits are important and we will adhere to the state requirements of completing them every year. There was also a comment about a balanced budget, and that would be a policy decision with council, but I think that could be part of how you look at your long-term financial plan and again, the spending plan for this.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so with that, council discussion. Anybody would like to go first, or would you like? me
I
to-
actually have a follow-up question
Go ahead,
to
please.
confirm on those points. So I'm looking at, so what you've attached as Exhibit B, the ordinance, shows changes from the currently applicable transfer tax, which is being repealed, and it shows the changes. So essentially, it's the same ordinance. Can we confirm today that if someone's allowing their children to inherit a property, that the current tax does not apply?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
And Catherine, do you have any?
I don't have
question?
any additional concern with that. I mean, this is, like you said, this has been on the books for a long time and I'm not aware of any tax for a gift.
For a
Yeah.
gift, okay. And a conveyance would, like legally speaking, a conveyance for an inheritance would be a quote gift. I just want to
Right.
make sure that we're really tight on this and that we're comfortable that it, like, I don't want to do research tonight, but I did want confirmation that we haven't been charging less on the current one, because the only thing we're changing are some of the very specific rate and a couple of sentences that are underlined. Otherwise, it's the exact same thing we're living under.
And again, the current ordinance refers to the tax rate, the 27.5 cents for each $500. And again, it's our understanding is, the town doesn't actually.
That's zero.
If it's zero, then
we
it's,
charge
then
it
it's
on.
also zero. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then to the point of a hard commitment on always doing audits on time and the like, I thought one policy like behind a bunch of laws is that this council cannot bind future councils. Is that also a factor in considering that? We can decide what's appropriate for us, but I don't see how you could do that legally.
Yeah, that is generally a legal principle that current councils cannot bind future councils. I would note that this ordinance does in section 2 contain fiscal accountability provisions that does clarify the role of the town's finance and audit committee pursuant to its charter authority. The idea wasn't to give them, additional responsibilities, but really to clarify that as part of their existing charter authority to provide this independent review and oversight, the funds that are generated by this tax would be included in the audit and would be reviewed by the committee, and they would make recommendations to the council as they have been doing in their oversight capacity.
And then just one thing I'd say a council can set a policy. A future council can change that policy, but in between, it sets an expectation with the public. And so when the new council changes that policy, if that's not meeting the expectations of the public, then the public can speak out. So, at least it sets an expectation, even if it doesn't bind a future council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just wanting to put a fine point on that because it is something that I think we've considered in other contexts, and that's been a running theme for me. So I did want to bring out that principle. Okay, those are the questions that were follow-up, so you can do with it what you
Right.
will.
Oh, that's great. So do you want to we're kind of in discussion
Yeah,
section.
sure. Okay. There's been a lot of work, there's been a lot of analysis, there's been a lot of consultation, input. This has been a long process over a year, and it's very clear to me that we need to be doing something for the viability of our town. I think we've done a lot of thinking through of how this should look. I do think that even a 50% plus one success is going to require simplicity, communication, attention, and I personally think keeping things as simple as possible for now is in our interest. We have to do something. So is this perfect? I think it's in the range of being very useful, and yes, I support it, both as to the rate and the language. No ballot measure is, Shakespeare. And it's always going to be something that you can parse. And a ballot measure, there is an art to putting that together that I'm not an expert in. So I tend to look at that language as something that's been pressure tested by the people we've engaged who are more familiar with that landscape. So I feel pretty strongly that we ought to keep it simple. We polled on the $10 per thousand. I respectfully disagree that we'll never put it down. I actually do suspect, though, the capital improvement projects we have put off for way too long are going to be a hurdle to get through, because we're going to have a period of years where we're having to prioritize and set with the finance committee's consultation and good thinking, ways of establishing a rolling budget or a way to identify key capital improvement projects. But at some point, we will get through that, and we should never be charging more than we need. The variables we deal with the sheriff's contract, even with the wood chipping and the like, I think people in town would probably want to spend more on wildfire prevention. I think the harsh realities of this year and what we're dealing with have influenced what we've been able to do within the budget. So I think I would keep it simple. I support it pretty much as it is. I think people are asking really great questions, and that I would encourage people to continue to ask questions and pressure test and understand, because it's in all of our interests for the public to understand why, what, and how, and move forward. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Mary, Rebecca, might go next. Mary?
Well, I have been a long proponent of a charter town. I think it's very much in the character of Portola Valley to be a charter town. This is definitely not my vision of what the charter town would have looked like if we had done the full charter town analysis. I looked pretty carefully at the history over the last 6 years of charter towns and why we weren't a charter town. And I don't think there was ever a good reason. I think we did it really very quickly and sort of in an emergency kind of fashion to become a town. I think charter town was much more suitable for Portola Valley. This particular charter doesn't change anything in the governance, and which is a good thing because we're not ready for a lot of changes there. So I'm in complete support of getting the charter town at least process started. The transfer tax, a characteristic of Portola Valley is that we are a resilient rural community dedicated to the idea that we can, in fact, cope with emergency situations. You cannot cope with emergency situations if you have no financial reserves. We're down from 60%, which was our historic reserve, down to 20% under our leadership. I'm not comfortable with moving forward at a 20%, and I'm certainly not comfortable moving forward at a zero reserve, which is what we're looking at within our foreseeable, very closely foreseeable future, 2 years. So I'm 100% in support of this ballot measure, moving it forward and moving it forward at the $10 level. And the reason why I'm in for that is that within 5 years, we can be as resilient as we were 5 years ago. And that, to me, this is a time when we need, as a town, to invest in our town. We really can't rely on anyone else in an emergency situation. And we need to have these resources in order to be able to move forward safely. So from a public health point of view, but also from just a community resilience point of view, this is critical. This is absolutely time sensitive, and we're doing it fast, and we need to do it now.
Thank you, Mary. Ellen, Rebecca? Ellen?
Sure. I get asked often how this town is on the fiscal cliff, right? But many nearby cities are fiscally constrained right now, hugely constrained. Costs have just gone up, public safety, the costs of, labor costs. We also have a history of volunteers in the city. And because of that, the piece of the pie we get from the county is smaller than what other counties get. But we also have a history of pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. So, and And I want to continue to enjoy Portola Valley's autonomy. Mike Callaghan in the county, like, God bless you guys and my friends in the planning department over there. But I really want Portola Valley to have autonomy around land use and our safety issues. I want to make sure that we are able to do our evacuation route. We have put off a lot of the areas, fire protection and evacuation, shortened town hours, to have town hall open. A skeleton staff, which stresses them out and doesn't always serve the public. Capital projects around our storm drains. Like, I just, what wakes you up at night? That is one of the things that you worry about. Like, as we face El Nino, like, is the town going to make it through this next year without a catastrophic breakdown? And too many potholes that we didn't used to all have those, and the list goes on. The town, and this is bitter, but the town needs the money to continue enjoying what we've got. So I support it. I support the $10 per 1,000. Because, I do think that we have these capital projects in front of us. So, so I appreciate how staff has gotten us to this point, and what you guys have done. And the legal aspects, I used to say I would never vote for, I did not support a charter city, and here I voted for it, and I'm voting for this tax. So never say never. Thank you. Here we are.
Thank you, Helen. Rebecca?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously always a challenging decision for a council to decide to raise a revenue measure to help pay for the town's services. Portola Valley has very limited options. I think we all recognize that we are essentially a residential bedroom community. We don't have a lot of commercial. We have no hotel. We have no boutique hotel. We don't have a boutique convention center or something that might bring in extra money. All we have is, mainly residential, mainly homes. And the reality is that our homes don't actually turn over very often, which means that a significant number of our residents have been able to enjoy living in Portola Valley for 50, 60, 70, 80 years because their taxes haven't gone up, that their taxes don't cover the actual cost of the town to operate the town. So we are at this point. We've had the Finance and Audit Committee explore a lot of options, the staff as well. We've been looking at this for 2 years. 2 years we've been exploring all sorts of different options. And ultimately, the decision for a charter town with a property tax, transfer tax, is what is made the most sense. We hired a very experienced consultant who has had tremendous success with getting their ballot measures passed. And we took their advice. We are taking their advice. They had us do a survey, a scientifically designed survey to understand the appetite of the residents to be willing to make a larger community contribution to supporting the town and to helping the town run and be fiscally responsible. I think many people have underestimated how much the costs have gone up. We already heard today and in the packet that in the past 5 years, our public safety, our sheriff's contract has gone up 85%. If you look at housing, our average housing has gone up in that same 5 periods less than 25%. So obviously we can't keep up with sheriff costs if they keep going up like that. And it's similar in other areas. We all have had increases in insurance costs, just like the town has. Staffing has gone up because staff have had increases in their costs. So we do have to recognize that we have very few levers that we can play with in order to have a functioning town. So this one, based on many people studying it for many months, makes the most sense. And I wanted to say that based on the polling and based on the advice of our consultants, the 10% was what the community was reasonable, what a majority of the community, 60% of the community felt was reasonable. And I do want to say that we have built into the whole ordinance and the whole ballot measure the ability to have tremendous amount of flexibility so that if we do stabilize our reserves and enable them to come back up to 60%, if we set aside $1 million a year for our capital projects and our safety projects that have been left languishing for 5 years or more, and we start making a lot of progress on that, in a few years, it's entirely possible that we would be able to reduce this somewhat. And by leaving it at 10% in the ballot measure means that we have that
Hey,
flexibility.
Rebecca, so you keep saying 10%, but you mean 1%. It's
Sorry,
$10
yes,
per thousand.
Yes, thank you for correcting.
Yeah, sorry.
$10 per thousand. Thank you for correcting the 1%. So I think that flexibility is really helpful. And for those who say that councils have never reduced it, that is not true. I mean, our UUT was actually reduced a few years ago. So, and perhaps that's led to some of the issues that we now have. But I think having that flexibility, having the fiscal accountability procedure in place, having the ability of the town council and future town councils to make modifications, find that it's necessary, is really important. And I think I trust our finance department to keep us on track with the budgets. They've been very frugally responsible. They've been very careful to recommend expenses that we can bear right now. But the recognition is that we have had a not 100% balanced budget, but as close as we can make it based on things like deferring capital expenses. So I have seen costs for other towns that have done a storm drain evaluation report. This is just the report, not the repairs. And then it's on the order of $300,000 to $500,000. So if we're talking about putting aside $1 million for our safety and capital projects, the report alone eats up almost a third to a half of that money, and that doesn't count for repairing 50-year-old storm drains that have rusted out and that could lead to washing out an entire neighborhood if they were to fail. So I think it's really important. And also I've been working with Craig about the safety element, and we've been putting together this repository of all of the recommended actions that our safety committees have recommended. And the list has 260 items on it. That doesn't say all those items need to be done. Many of them, or not many, but quite a few have been already done and they're in ordinances. But there's a large number of items that our safety committees are recommending that we tackle, and we have had no money to do those. So I think it's important that we raise sufficient money to be able to safeguard the town. And the polling said very clearly that people are very concerned about wildfire, and that's why it's listed first, not because we're planning to spend the most amount of money on the first item, but legally this is a tax that is for general spending that will include a number of items, including wildfire preparation and the others that are listed there that are priorities communicated by our town. So at this point, I recommend that we approve this as written with the 1% tax rate.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank my fellow council members for your comments. I agree with, I think, all of them. I'd also like to say that, I believe in this town. I believe in our general plan. We have built a town that's special, and that process has been intentional. We haven't gotten here by accident. We have buildings that are subservient to the land. We have limited lighting. We have limited fencing. That's because the town exists and we control our own destiny. And I think that that's critical, and it's critical that we do that in the future. For people who don't know, because we have always been efficient and frugal, we get 4 cents on every property tax dollar. It's so low that they had to pass another ordinance to round it up to 7%. We get the lowest property tax rate of any jurisdiction in the county. So I think it's important to know that this is not a town that's spending money hand over fist. I believe that the $10 is the right one. I believe it sets a ceiling, and I think that's important. As I think Rebecca mentioned, we have lowered the UUTs, so councils have lowered the taxes. And I would also remind the public that if we get to the point where we have an out of control council that is not careful with money, that this can be withdrawn by the voters. This is not permanent. This is not forever. This is until the voters decide whether they want to continue. So I think we have safeguards in terms of the voters. And I also think we have safeguards in terms of the council, because I've found that our councils have been thoughtful and that the councils generally do not believe that overtaxing the citizens is one of their goals. So I'm comfortable, and the controls that we have is we could lower UUT, and we can also lower the real property tax, the real property transfer tax. So I'm comfortable with the controls we have for lowering this. So I think that stuff will work well in our favor. So I think in closing, I would just say, I love Portola Valley. I want to protect our values. So I'm very much in favor of this. As much as I dislike taxes, I'm not in favor of taxes in general, but I believe that this is the right thing for the town to do now. So with that, I would entertain a motion do we need to read the whole thing? Can I just sort of point us? I mean, I'm happy to read it.
No, you can refer, well, the resolution, might be, just to be clear, it might be good if we could just pull up the language.
I mean, it's
Or on the
adoption of the
yeah.
resolution submitted to the voters of Portola Valley. A measure both to adopt a town charter and to authorize a real property transfer tax at the general election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2026, as called by resolution 3001-2026. So I would accept a motion in a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I hear no opposition. Thank you very much, everyone. This has been a long, hard set of discussions and decisions, and it will go on. I think one thing we've heard from the other council members, I think particularly Judith was right. If members of the public have questions, they should ask them. We want to make sure that we are crystal clear on what the consequence of this ordinance or this resolution is. So with that, I'm going to close 8B and move on to agenda item number 9. So are there any oral subcommittee, liaison committee, or agency reports? See none on this side. One. Okay, go ahead, Helen.
So the wildfire, do you mind if I do this report, actually? The wildfire, or are you going to do it?
I submitted something paper for next time, but that's welcome. You're welcome to go ahead and.
Okay, I just wanted to let council know I am not the liaison, so. But One Shoreline did go to the wildfire committee last Wednesday. I think it was last Thursday, sorry. And they approved being part of a pilot for the county along with Hillsborough, and then there'll be a coastal area for fire to help, a pilot to help with wildfire insurance. And it's a minimum of 25 households, and it's to be determined where in town it would be. So the wildfire committee is working on that. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, can I add one other thing?
Yep.
One Shoreline was recommending that we identify where the greatest concentration of homes that have been forced to go onto the FAIR plan. So I would really love it if our residents could let us know if they are on the FAIR plan, because that would help us determine, sort of localize what neighborhood made the most sense to participate in this pilot. And the pilot is about home hardening and vegetation clearance, sort of the impact of that might have on a larger neighborhood scale in terms of helping to reduce insurance rates. So we'd like to identify that. So if you're on the FAIR plan, please talk to MJ Lee over at the Wildfire Preparedness Committee, or probably you can just call into the town as well, or email into the town to let us know that you're on the FAIR plan.
And also I'll just add a couple other things. So, it's not expected to cost the town anything. So I wanted to bring that up. And then, the pilot will bring in, like contractors and scale of economy. So hopefully there'll be a savings to homeowners, but the homeowners would probably need to pay for their home hardening themselves to explain the economics of the pilot. And so not everyone will want to be part of it, which is understandable, but hopefully there's a scale of economy because of bringing, doing more home hardening all at once. So that's the idea too. So thank you.
All right, with that, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on agenda item number 9? I see no one in the room with their hands up. And I see no hands online. All right, so I'm going to bring it back to the council and look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.